What's up, team? Sean from Rest to Live here. And always, we're going to jump right in on two topics today. So these are sort of things that are top of mind, but I want to share some additional thoughts that maybe isn't being talked about in the media because I think we're falling into this trap of a little bit of what I would call like gossip finance, which is honestly starting to get kind of old. It makes for good stories and it makes for some good conversations, perhaps, but it's also very distracting. It's also very distracting for people who maybe are all in on certain things. And I just thought I wanted to bring a little bit of reason to the world here for a second. So we can cover two things today. It won't be a long video. I want to talk about Elon, what's going on with Google and Sergey Brin, and why sometimes you have to take a big step back and say, who cares? And at the same time, ascertain, well, does it really matter or not? And maybe it does. And then secondly, I just want to talk about this update with the SEC calling some cryptocurrencies actually securities, and why this is really, really important and something I think, frankly, needs to be made aware of. So let's talk about this Elon thing first and foremost, right? Elon is a very divisive figure. Some absolutely love him. He's the smartest man who's ever lived. Some despise him, thinks, could maybe call it a fraud or some extreme on that end as well. I think what we have here is we have a case of the celebrity CEO, right? We've got a lot of brilliance at this level. He's building these great companies, these amazing companies doing amazing things. I think, you could argue that, but it's gonna be hard to make that argument. But the problem is where we draw the line of, are we now treating him like a celebrity with gossip articles and what he does in his personal life and how many kids he has and who he's dating and who he's, doing things improperly on the side with or morally or ethics or whatever. I think there's a time and a place for taking a step back and just asking yourself, like, do I really care what Elon's doing outside of his role as, CEO, director, chairperson, whatever it might be for these different companies or things he's running? Is it terrible that maybe he had an affair with Sergey Brin's wife? Yeah, of course. Like from a pure morality or ethics perspective, that's true. That's terrible. But you got to kind of be cold at times when it comes to these things and say, like, is the problem that he did that? Or is the problem that then Sergey Brin said, pull all my money out of everything he's doing? And this could mean down the road relationship issues with Google. This could mean that other partners may not want to work with him. This is an unfortunate but true reality in today's realm of investing and research, where as much as I want to sit here and say, like, who cares what the guy does? I don't care if he had a ham sandwich for lunch or not. But the reality is, when you're at that level and you're impacting other folks who are at that same level running equally large and giant enterprises, there's something to be said for a little bit of professionalism and stability in the way that he operates his life and runs these companies. Because although Tesla's amazing and we've got all these amazing things we're working on, and SpaceX is doing amazing things, and we're all excited for what can come in that space, the constant embroilment in lawsuits with Twitter, issues with partners, fighting with politicians, I understand it makes him who he is, and certainly the man is brilliant. I don't, it's going to be hard to convince me otherwise. The reality is, at some point, it is going to have an impact on the company, and maybe not on the stock price, but on the company, right? Do people want to go and work somewhere where they're going to have constant negative news about their leader? Well, some people may not, and those might be very smart people. Some people might start to shy away from shares or stock price here, or buying the stock and lowering the share price, because they don't want to get into something that can be so whipsaw vulnerable because of leadership. And I think that part of what makes him so good at what he does is he has a personality type that is what it is. And I'm not criticizing it. Frankly, I'm looking at it just from a numbers and cents perspective. But the reality is, it can't be constant, never-ending news about this guy's personal life. And he has to be focused on the things he's doing. And I think he is, but it does draw a lot of negative attention in where maybe it doesn't need to be negative attention. And for the record, I'm not talking about whether the stock should be at 300 or 3,000 or 300,000 or some other number. What I'm simply saying is, we need to recognize stability in our investments, and stability leads to growth, and growth leads to value, and the values we're ultimately trying to trace back to in our own portfolios. So I just think it's important that we understand where the line is drawn, and then when that line is crossed, does it have a material impact on the business? I think this situation with Google and Sergey Brin is just the beginning, and it makes me very, very nervous. And unfortunately, this seems to be the way a lot of CEOs are going, is this celebrity CEO motion. And I just want to call it out that, and I'll move on. I just want to talk about this for a second today, but it's just a real sad state of affairs that in many ways, a lot of kids or teenagers or even, older folks look up to Elon for what he's done in business. And it's sort of just a sad state of affairs that it also includes, all these other things that just don't need to be happening. And it's not a judgment at all. I don't think that I'm on a moral high ground in any capacity whatsoever. I'm just simply saying that it's very hard to connect the dots to see like a great leader who's also got a lot of these other issues coming up all the time on a regular basis. And it would just be great to see some stability there. And that's why my ultimate advice, the way that I manage this, is I don't pay attention to it. If I believe in the position that I have, then all this outside noise, I'm going to treat it as just that noise. I'm going to protect myself with downside hedging. I'm going to perhaps leverage other techniques to make sure I can take advantage of those upward swings. But ultimately, it's just another piece of the pie that you have to build into your risk model for what would happen if he had to step away from the business, if it was more significant, if there are accusations, if there were claims. And I think this is just a good practice in general, looking at any company within your portfolio for what would happen if the key man policy sort of came into place here and we lost the guy at the top or the gal at the top or the person at the top. So that's it on that front. I want to switch gears real quick here to the realm of cryptocurrency. I do talk about this occasionally, but not that often. So I thought this might be just sort of a quick touch base. We heard some pretty big noise coming out of the crypto world based on a recent SEC decision. So I'm going to read you a little bit of this article here, and then I want to comment on it quickly, but I don't think this should be that big of a deal to a lot of folks. So essentially, according to the SEC, right, a security is an investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profit derived from the effort of others. AKA, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to try to generate revenue and thus profit doing something in and around the business, right? Could be a restaurant, could be building houses, could be providing a service. You as an investor have an expectation that when you put your money into my business, that there will be some sort of return for it that you're not working for directly. So there was a pretty big announcement that came out, and the SEC and the Department of Justice essentially filed charges against former Coinbase product manager Ishan Wahi, as well as two other gentlemen as well, or two other people as well. I don't have their names in front of me, accusing them of running an insider trading scheme that earned them more than $1.1 million. Always sort of an interesting point here to think that only $1.1 million. Now that's a lot of money to a lot of people, but to think like the amount of attention this got for three folks at $1 million, it kind of speaks to the fact that I think maybe this was more about making a point than getting after someone who did something big. Part of the problem as well is there was a tip off to a brother and a friend about some upcoming token listing announcements before they hit the market. So essentially, it was classic insider trading, giving a heads up about something before it was going to happen. Now, the problem was, and again, I'm taking a quote here, ahead of those announcements, which usually resulted in an increase in the assets prices, Nikhil Wahi and Ramani allegedly purchased at least 25 crypto assets, at least 9 of which were securities, and then typically sold them shortly after the announcement for profit. This is according to the SEC that they released on July 21st. Now, the 9 specific tokens that they're talking about are Flex's AMP, Rally's RLY, Deriva Dex's DDX, XY Labs XYO, Rary Capital's RGT, and Liechtenstein Crypto Assets Exchanges, LCX, Powers POWR, DFX Finances DFX, and finally, Chromatica Finances KROM or CROM. Now, the reason I'm calling this out is not because I want you to go out and be in fear or be concerned about something bad happening, but frankly, what I'm trying to say is just be aware that there could be something in your portfolio that might suddenly and abruptly become something else. You think you're holding a cryptocurrency, SEC comes in and says, that's not a cryptocurrency, that's a security. We now have purview over that. We have purview over the way it can be managed, regulated, used, etc. So you could see cases where assets are worth nothing because now they're no longer tradable, or they need to have massive amounts of regulation introduced. And I don't think a lot of these folks or companies or teams are really prepared for that. So in a string of what has been pretty terrible news in the crypto world, this is just more pressure that can create downside asymmetric losses. So be very, very aware of that before you do anything. Know what's in your portfolio and really ask yourself real frankly, like, do I own this because it's providing a real actual value? And if the answer is yes, could it be seen as something you've put money in that other people are building with an expectation of profit? And the SEC might agree that that is, in that case, not a cryptocurrency. So I just want to call these two things out. They're completely disparate, but they speak to the same idea that our assumptions about what is going on or what is not going on, or the importance therein too, it can really impact your portfolio if you're not prepared for what something that happens outside of your control was to suddenly arise, whether it's Elon having accusations on planes, or cheating with someone's wife, or having kids with people that work for him, right? Which so far hasn't led to a lot of negative things to happen, but it could. Or it could be your crypto portfolio where you're trying to get some big gains, and then suddenly those assets you're holding are worth nothing. Just be aware of these things that exist. Be aware of where they are in your portfolio. Be aware of how to get yourself away from it and out of it. A final piece, and not to make anyone mad, but if you're investing in like all these rando crypto coins, you have to admit to yourself at some point, these aren't real companies. Some of them, sure, maybe some of them are, but the vast majority of them are just based on a one-page white paper or something, on an idea that's never going to be executed in reality. I'm not talking about the major ones here, but just some of these sort of like no-name tiny ones that we have out here. Just be aware, like it's very likely there's a lot more insider trading going on than you're aware of, and you never know what the resulting end play is going to be. So with that, sorry, kind of a random one today, but these two were both top of mind. I hope you have a good day. Hope you enjoy what you're watching. Feel free to leave comments below and let me know if there's other things you want to talk about, or if you think I'm wrong. I mean, I'm open to being totally wrong as always. So with that, I appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. Good hunting out there.